What's going on? Welcome to the show. I want to welcome one of the great personalities and analysts in the sports world as we have the great Chris Broussard. Chris Broussard, how are you doing today, man?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Enjoying your Saturday?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's I always enjoy a day off
Yeah.
as much as I like sports.
Knowledge, inspiration, and nurturing through God.
Yep, that's what the King movement stands for. It's a national men's movement, and we just trying to help men become, all that God created them to be.
That's right. And that's why you're a true inspiration out here. But you go to high school, you go to college, and you're actually a sports player. You played basketball, you played football, and you're actually in the Hall of Fame at your high school.
Yeah, I played football and basketball at Holy Name High School in Parma Heights, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cleveland. And that our football team that year, I was a wide receiver. We went to the state playoffs, which is, that's a big deal. We won our division, got to the states, and we lost in the first round, but we still got there. In fact, the quarterback that beat us, Larry Wonky, I think he became Mr. Irrelevant, the last player drafted in the NFL. He went to Pitt and then left there and went somewhere else, but he was at least drafted in the NFL, I believe. And then I think that's the case. Check that out. But and then basketball, when I was there, we went to the district championship game for the first time in 14 years. So I had a nice career there. Played in the city all-star game in Cleveland where they brought the best senior basketball players from throughout the area together, Greater Cleveland, and played in that all-star game. So yeah, I had a nice little career, and it was great for them to induct me into the Hall of Fame.
What was your most memorable game in basketball that you had throughout your career? It could be in college or high school.
Oh man. I mean, I had better games. I would say two really come to mind. My senior year, we were in the district tournament, and we were playing the team they were ranked in the top 5 in the area, Strongsville. And I think they had only lost like one game that season, if that. And we upset them in the district like semis. And I think I had 15 points, like 4 assists, 6 assists, something like that. And then we won that. Everybody was expecting them to be in the championship against St. Ignatius. I don't know if you heard of St. Ignatius, but they became they were a powerhouse in the city and the state in football when I was there, and basketball. But then a couple years after I graduated, they became one of the top handful of football programs in the country. And so they had a great basketball team that year, and we played them in the district championship, packed house. Rick Majerus, who used to coach Marquette, the late Rick Majerus, he was there recruiting one of their players. And they were up 22-5 on us, right? In the first quarter or early in the second quarter. It seemed like it was over. And we came back, and we ended up losing by a point.
That's a heartbreaker.
Yeah, 1 point. We won that, we would have been in the regionals. But yeah, those two games, like I said, I had good games, both games. But those two stick out just because of the impact of those games and the stage.
From being an athlete, where did the passion of sports writing come in? Because you could have chose probably to go into the NBA or the NFL if you wanted to.
Well, I certainly couldn't have chose to go there as a player. Because I would have chose that. That was my dream, like a lot of kids growing up. But one thing I tell young people is, look, yeah, so many young men particularly want to be a pro football or basketball or baseball player. And if you don't make it on the field as an athlete, you can still have a career in or around professional sports in various ways: journalism, broadcasting, training, nutrition, coaching, marketing, being a sports agent. I mean, it goes on and on. But the one thing you need for most of those fields is an education. So even if, as you're seeking your dream of becoming a pro athlete, make sure you hit the books and do well in class and get your grades straight, because then you can still have a career in sports. And I got to be honest, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I would not have wanted to be a professional athlete, but there are a lot of times I feel like, man, it's worked out better this way,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because I have this career for 30, 40 years, you know, and I'm not banged up, and I enjoy my lifestyle. And, you know, I've been at every major event you could name: the Super Bowl, the World Series, the baseball All-Star game, the NBA All-Star game, the NBA Finals, like on and on. And so I've really been blessed. Traveled around the world: Africa, Spain, France, England, Italy, Kuwait, covering the game of basketball, every major city in the United States. So it's been really great. And so again, if you're an aspiring athlete, know that there are other options out there for you, even if you don't make it as an athlete. But what happened for me was my sophomore year in college, I looked around at my teammates and my friends, and all of them seemed to know what they wanted to do with their career. Some wanted to be engineers, some wanted to become medical doctors, some wanted to go to law school, some were going to public policy school, whatever it may have been. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I got scared, and I was like, man, I got 2.5 years left to figure out what I want to do so I can become a responsible adult, you know, in a couple of years, take care of myself. And so I came up with a formula, which was something I enjoyed, which was sports, plus something I was gifted at, which was writing. Like, I always had the gift of writing. I used to write rhymes. I started writing rhymes when I was like 9 years old, when I first heard Rapper's Delight, right? Sugar Hill Gang.
Sugar Hill Gang.
But that actually helped my writing ability because it increased my vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking in the thesaurus for words, and it increased my ability to tell a story with transitions and in the flow. And even I rapped in high school and college, so that got me comfortable in front of crowds and articulating. I mean, I wasn't no gangster rapper, you know what I'm saying? So I learned how to articulate, you know, just all that. It prepared me in a lot of ways. And so I took something I was gifted at, plus something I enjoyed, and I said, let me try to become a sports writer. And fortunately enough, my grades were good. I did well in school, and I was able to realize that dream.
You got a BA in English.
Yes. Yeah. Oberlin didn't have a journalism program. It was a liberal arts school. Mm-hmm. I did write some for the school newspaper, but I was an English major, and I got my big break the summer after my junior year. I had a summer internship at the Cleveland Plain Dealer, which was the biggest newspaper in Ohio at the time. Mm-hmm. And so that was really my main introduction to sports writing. And I did well in that and got better over the weeks. And when I graduated, they told me that they were going to hire me when I graduated. They were going to hire me a year later when I graduated. And so that was my first job out of college. And I started off answering phones in the newsroom, and then progressed. A few months later, moved on to covering high school sports. And then after about 3 or 4 years of covering high school sports, I moved up to the pros.
And you actually became the beat writer and actually covering the Cavaliers. When was the first time that you saw LeBron James in person and it came to the realization that this guy is going to be the next biggest player?
Well, I tell people this. I may have seen LeBron when he was a kid, because I was in Akron. I left the Plain Dealer and went to the Akron Beacon Journal. Mm-hmm. And Akron's close to Cleveland, so I didn't even have to move. But I would go to summer tournaments in Akron that were actually thrown by a guy that was in LeBron's inner circle early in his career. And he was a friend of mine. And so these were big summer tournaments that, you know, were packed and a lot of people in Akron attended. And my guess is that LeBron was at one of those tournaments as like a little 9-year-old or something like that. So I may have seen him as a little kid, right? But then this person I'm talking about, who was one of his mentors, when I left Akron and went to the New York Times, this was around 1999, 2000, something like that. This guy, we were talking on the phone, and he said, hey man, we got the next big thing. We got the next Jordan here in Akron. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, word? Like, and in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, right. Like, come on, man. Akron, yeah, y'all producing the next Jordan. Because look, Ohio has produced great players, but Ohio is more of a football state. It's not like a basketball hotbed, right?
No. Like
New Jersey, New York, California, Florida, you know, and Chicago. And so I'm thinking, yeah, all right. So I'm talking to him, I'm like, so was he playing national? They play AAU? He's like, yeah, man, he killing the best players in the country. Like, even if their team doesn't win, he's getting his, like he's killing. And so I started following him a little, and then of course he begins to blow up. And so that's when I, you know, and then by the time I didn't meet LeBron personally until, well, I covered his first game for the New York Times. He played in Sacramento, and that's when the Kings were good. They had Chris Webber. I don't know if Webber might have been hurt that year, but Webber,
Jason Williams,
Stojakovic, Mike Bibby, Vlade Divac, they were a great team. One of the tops in the league. And LeBron had struggled in the preseason. And so I went to cover that game, and he was awesome. He had 27, I believe he had 27 points, 9 or 7 rebounds, assists, something like that. But he was great. And I remember I talked to Larry Bird, did a story the next day off of talking to Larry Bird. And Bird said, he said 2 things that were crazy. One, he said, if we're not talking about this guy as a surefire Hall of Famer within 5 years, then something went wrong. And then he said, he's the only player I ever saw who I thought could have went straight to the NBA after his junior year of high school. And so that's the first time I saw LeBron. I was in the scrum interviewing him. And then I met him a couple, maybe 2 years later. I was doing a story on him for ESPN, the magazine. And when I met him for that story, he was like, oh, I seen this dude, you know, and he was a little guarded at first because he had a bad experience with ESPN, the magazine. But Maverick Carter, I don't know if Rich Paul was there that day, but Randy Mims was with him, and Maverick, and maybe a bodyguard or two. But then over time, we got to know each other, and we became real cool. And I haven't seen him in a while. You know, I don't get out to games as much anymore because I'm always in studio. But I got to know him pretty well early in his career.
And that's great that you did, because that's history for you and sports. You covered the New York Times, you mentioned before, the Nets and the Knicks. I agree with your take on Giannis when you tweeted about that on Twitter, because he didn't have all these players around him. LeBron and KD, they go to all these super teams and they win. And if you look at LeBron now, he just got Russell Westbrook here.
Right. Now he did win it, and you know, and people push back. Well, him and AD, that wasn't a super team. And I get that. I will admit, I think a super team is 3. It's a trio. But so I wouldn't call them a super team. But there's another element to the super team, which is players generating it, and players picking, I want to play with this star, and I want to, you know what I mean? And so AD forcing his way to the Lakers, that with the help of LeBron's agent and his agent too, they're the same agent. But that is, that's a quality of a super team, versus, hey, these are the players I got. I got to go get busy with these dudes, But now you're right. Now they are a super team.
Yeah.
So we'll see if they can win it.
And back in 2016, people forget too that if it wasn't for Kyrie Irving's shot in the finals in the game against the Warriors, if he didn't make that 3-pointer, who knows if they would have won that game.
Yeah, I mean, the game was tied at that time. Nobody had scored in a while. But Kyrie, that's one of the biggest shots in NBA history.
Yeah.
Another one is the Ray Allen shot.
Yep. When they played for the Heat.
Yeah. And so, but LeBron obviously was tremendous in both of those games, both of those series, and had, of course, probably the most iconic block or even defensive play in the history of the league. And so he contributed a little bit to those championships too.
He did. Not the crucial plays, though. Not the real crucial shots.
Well, I would say crucial plays, not
crucial shots.
The last shot.
Yeah.
But that's where, I think right now, there's too much emphasis on the last shot or who takes the last shot. I mean, Michael Jordan, two of the biggest plays in his career, he didn't take the last shot.
Nope.
Steve Kerr, John Paxson, and even like back in the day, it wasn't like the best player has to take the last shot. And if he doesn't, shame on him. He's not clutch. Back in the day, you ran a play with options.
Yeah.
So if this first option isn't here, we got this to go to. Magic Johnson's famous junior sky hook 1987 in the finals against Boston. Magic told me himself he was the third option on that play. James Worthy was the first. Above Kareem and Magic, who were better players, Kareem was the second and Magic was third, but it wasn't like that was a blow or an insult to Magic or Kareem.
Yeah.
We ran a good play we thought could work, And so I think that's how we need to look. That's the better way to look at it than to give it to one dude and say, go get it, big fella. You saw Brooklyn did that with Durant. And it's not against Durant because it was a tough – I ain't even like them putting him in that position. But in Game 7 against Milwaukee in overtime, they were
airballed
just the ball and saying, go 1-on-5, man. And that was a bad spot to put anybody in. And so I think coaches need to rethink that when they're looking at these end of the game scenarios.
With the Knicks, as you covered them when you were at the New York Times, James Dolan was obviously tied up in a broom closet this year. He didn't do anything that made the players angry or anything to his legends. Do you think that the stars are finally going to come here? Because I feel as though as Knicks fans, we're all fools. We always buy into the news that we hear going around on Twitter and in the press. Do you feel as though that this is the year finally, now that we have Tom Thibodeau, we've established a winning culture, that players will actually come here?
Well, this isn't the year because there just aren't that many players.
Yeah.
It's not a good free agent summer. Kawhi could be free, but I don't expect him to move. And I think he'll re-sign with the Clippers. Damian Lillard, is it possible he forces his way to New York? Possible. He does like New York from what I'm told. But I think he'll go back to Portland for a year. And then if they don't go deeper in the playoffs, next offseason is when he'll be moved and want to move. And New York's a possibility. Mm-hmm. But this year, they need to be wise with their money. They need to sign guys to smaller contracts, maybe a year with this option for the second year, because there just aren't that many big game changers out there.
Yeah.
Chris Paul, I think, going to stay in Phoenix. And so they just need to be wise. But going forward, maybe we'll see, if they can get that big guy. But man, they have been left at the altar so many times. And so who knows if their luck will turn in the future.
Yeah. I just don't get why players don't want to play here, especially when you look at the net success this year. The Knicks were still the hottest thing in New York City.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing, and I didn't grow up in New York. I'm from the Midwest, man. I moved around a lot as a kid. I was born in the South, raised in the Midwest. And when I moved to New York to cover the Nets in 1998 for the New York Times, and then I started covering the Knicks a couple years later, I was shocked when I got here to New York. And everybody, the media in New York, all thought that everybody wanted to play for the Knicks. I was shocked at how big New Yorkers thought the Knicks were. And I remember whether it was Chris Webber, Grant Hill, whoever was a free agent, if there was a big time free agent, the media thought he was coming to New York. Even if the Knicks didn't have money, they were like, well, figure out a way, the league will figure out a way, something. They felt that guy was coming to New York. Never mind that most of those guys didn't even want to come to New York.
Yeah.
But that was how New Yorkers felt. And I had to tell New Yorkers, I'm like, look, the New York Knicks are not the LA Lakers. They are not the Dallas Cowboys. They are not the New York Yankees. They are not a national team. They are not a national treasure. Me, as a kid who loved basketball growing up in the Midwest, the Knicks were like the 12th team I thought of. when I thought about the NBA. Lakers, Celtics, 76ers, the Blazers, the Spurs, the Pistons, the Bulls. I mean, there were several teams that were just better than the Knicks year in, year out that you thought of before the Knicks. And so I was baffled, like, dudes growing up in Ohio, growing up in the South, growing up in California, they ain't growing up like, yo, I want to play for the Knicks one day. No, they growing up thinking, I want to play for the Lakers.
Yeah.
They growing up thinking, I want to play for the Yankees. I want to play for the Cowboys. Man, ain't nobody thinking of the Knicks like that. And it's been borne out. All these free agents, the Knicks are the Knicks. The Knicks are another team, period.
Yeah.
That's it. I hate to break it to you because I know you're a New Yorker.
Yeah.
They're just another basketball team. And all the players are like, yo, I love playing at the Garden. And they do.
Yeah.
For a night, twice a year, three times a year, whatever. And the thing that makes the Garden great is it's like a stage. It's lit up. The audience, the crowd is dark. There's celebrities, rappers in the front row. All that's fun. But that don't change the fact of the Knicks are just another NBA team. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
York, and I always say it too, man. Look, I grew up to the New York playgrounds. Kareem was from New York. Dr. J, street ball, Rucker, all that. Them days are over, man.
Yeah.
New York does not. I think New Jersey's better than New York as far as producing young basketball talent. Because New York, it's been a long time, man, since they produced. I mean, they've got like Meta World Peace, Elton Brand, who's from upstate, but, you know, Stephon Marbury, Lance Stevenson. But Stephon, Lance, Meta, they were very good NBA players, particularly Stephon and Meta. But none of them, Lamar Odom, they didn't live up to their, as great as they were, every single one of those dudes, except Lance, had Hall of Fame ability and potential. None of them's going to be in the Hall of Fame. And Lance was viewed as that. Lance was viewed as like one of the top 5 players in the country coming out of high school. But what it was is they all got nice one-on-one games. But the street ball, the best young players today, man, aren't growing up playing on the streets.
No.
They're growing up with personal trainers. They're growing up playing AAU. They're not playing on the playgrounds that much anymore, if at all. Who got the baddest street game in in the NBA right now?
I would say Kawhi.
Really?
Yeah.
Kyrie Irving.
You think Kyrie? Well, with the handles.
With that handle, finishing at the rim, Kyrie. Kyrie from the suburbs of New Jersey. Kyrie grew up down the street from where I live right now. I played with Kyrie's dad in leagues. I played with Kyrie's like 8th grade. He from the suburbs. Now I know his dad's taking him in the city, get that heart, work on your game. But Kyrie grew up in the suburbs, and he got the best street game in the league. Best handle ever.
I'll give it to you because of the handles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the finishing at the rim.
And the finishing at the rim.
That dude got it all offensively. Yeah. And someone in the league told me this a few years ago, about almost a decade ago. He said basketball has become a suburban sport, a suburban game. And because now, like I said, the best players are growing up with personal trainers. Kyrie's from the suburbs. Karl Anthony Towns from the suburbs. Who else? Ben Simmons is a suburban kid. I mean, he's from Australia. Heck, Kobe was a suburban kid. Michael Jordan might have been. I mean, Wilmington, North Carolina. You know, like a lot of the top players, particularly these players coming up now. It's different, man. And so New York, unfortunately, the guys have had other things that have kept them from fulfilling their potential. But yeah, man, I argue with Michael Rappaport about this. It ain't the Mecca no more of basketball. You can say that. I'll go along. I'll humor you, but it ain't the Mecca no more, man. I mean,
but I agree, because if it was, all these players would be coming here. They avoid it every year.
Or they'd be producing the best. Like I said, Kareem, Dr. J, they be producing the best players. You know, and now New Jersey's producing better players than New York.
Yeah.
And several other cities are too, you know?
Yeah, you got that right. And I wasn't a fan of the Knicks draft picks this year, trading them away, trading back. Quentin Grimes, Miles McBride. People are like, oh, great pick. Let's see what happens, because everyone said Obi Toppin was going to be this great player. And he was a bust last year. We got to admit it. We can give him his sophomore year. Let's see what happens his sophomore year. But Emmanuel Quickley was the better pick.
Yeah, I mean, Quickley was their best rookie. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, I mean, look, it's unfortunate. And I don't want to say it's unfortunate for Knicks fans, because a lot of this is luck, right? And if and RJ Barrett was okay, but if they had gotten the second pick, or the first, of course, but the first or second pick instead of the third, just one pick higher, they would have either Ja Morant or Zion Williamson. And now you're looking at an entirely different future for this team. And look, maybe they'll get one of those guys or somebody else in free agency. Yeah. And obviously that's their hope. But right now, you know, they don't have that guy.
No, they don't. You mentioned before that you were rapping in high school and college. Who were some of your favorite MCs growing up?
Man, I mean, I go back to the beginnings of hip hop, and I grew up in the Midwest, as I said, but around the early 80s, I was living in Syracuse. And so at that time, man, hip hop was like regional. Like you were hearing stuff in New York that they weren't getting in other parts of the country. You know, there were some songs that were national, but a lot of it was underground or not national. But my favorite MCs growing up, you know, obviously LL, you know, was the baddest MC in the mid 80s. Rakim, one of my favorites all time, probably my favorite all time is KRS-One.
Okay.
I like the New York East Coast style best. You know, the boom bap. Mm-hmm. I was in the Public Enemy, Big Daddy Kane. Obviously, you know, Run DMC was just, you know, they changed hip hop.
They did.
Before Run DMC, rappers was wearing costumes and
Yeah, with the big rope chains.
yeah, Run DMC still did that,
Yeah.
but Run DMC when they came out like in sweatsuits,
The
like
Adidas.
this is how we are. This is how we walk down the street. This is sweatsuits, the leather jackets, no costumes, not like go look at one of my favorites, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. Look at some of their albums from back in the day. They were wearing Melly Mel had like straps and leather and and Run DMC was just like, this is our everyday gear, right? And that changed hip hop because from that point on, that's how the rappers just like was dressing. This is how we roll in everyday gear, and they helped make it hard, and then LL made it hard. It was kind of disco before that, Treacherous 3 and groups like that were hot, man. I love those groups, Sugar Hill Gang and all that. Yeah. But yeah, some of those late 80s rappers I mentioned, I think Nas is one of the greatest ever with his lyricism.
100%.
Yeah. So Biggie's skills was just the combination of his skills,
his flow,
voice, his flow. I mean, that dude was phenomenal. And so yeah, I'm more in the East Coast rap. Not that there weren't great West Coast rhymers, and their music they made was dope. But I'm more into the East Coast style of hip hop.
I like that you said KRS-One. He was great with Boogie Down Productions, Big Daddy Kane, a part of the Juice Crew. Cool G Rap was another great one.
Oh yeah. I like KRS-One, man. I mean, I love KRS-One. Like I said, he's probably my favorite rapper of all time. And yeah, he's still out there doing it too.
Yeah, he is. But hip hop today is a dumpster fire.
Yeah, man. I gotta be honest. I mean, it really is. It's a lot different. And let's face, look, when I was coming up, the best hip hop, like most hip hop was played on the radio. Like if it wasn't played during the day, there were mix shows where they would mix in and you hear all the hip hop. Now, and I get it because the genres become so big, but now you don't hear, hip hop is so big that I don't think you hear the best hip hop on the radio.
No, you don't.
Like you just hear whatever the labels want you to play, and it might be the 12 or 15 songs that they want to make hot. It's not, the best MCs aren't on the radio necessarily anymore. Not that like Drake and Kendrick, they're great MCs and all that. But now, man, it's these underground cats that you never really hear on mainstream that's got, the best flows and, these cats doing it the underground style. And so I guess it's just the nature of the beast. To be honest, you can't put all the great hip hop on the radio anymore because it's too much.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah.
At least there's, now the way things are, a lot of these cats can get their stuff out without a label and all that stuff. And so yeah, but it was different back in the day.
Yeah, it definitely was. But Fox Sports 1, The Odd Couple, people can tune in. You and Rob Parker, people can tune in there. You can catch you on Undisputed with Skip and Shannon.
Yeah, we the Odd Couple's on Monday through Friday, 7 to 10 Eastern time, 4 to 7 Pacific. If they don't have Fox Sports Radio in your city, which I don't think they do in New York, but you can catch us on Sirius XM Channel 83, the iHeartRadio app, or Fox Sports Radio. And then, like you said, during the day, I'm on all our shows, Undisputed, The Herd, First Things First, and Speak for Yourself. So that's where you can catch a brother.
That's right. And throughout your time in the media world, who's the most difficult debater that you debated with in sports? Because you debated with all, Stephen A. Smith, Skip and Shannon. Who's the toughest one to go against?
I don't think there's a tough, when I say it's, like there's nobody that baffles you or, oh man, I can't combat what he's saying. Because, when you step into this business and you step onto when you go on the show, you better be ready.
Yeah.
Like you better know your stuff. You better do your homework. I mean, I think obviously Skip is great in that Skip is always going to be able to defend his point. Even if you disagree with it, even if you think it's ludicrous, he's going to have an argument, you know, and you can combat it, but he's going, and that's the thing. You have to be able to back up your point. And I remember like when First Things First or First Take first started, and, you know, you get the rappers and people that, oh, I want Skip. They want to get on there with Skip and defend LeBron or whatever it may be. And generally what will happen is that rapper, they got their first salvo. And then Skip goes back at them. And then they don't have anything else. You know what I mean? And then they just repeating their same old points. Like you have to have different layers to your argument. And you have to be able to go at it, you know, many levels. And so Skip's great. Nick Wright, my man at First Things First, he's great. He's knowledgeable. He's fun to go at it with. Stephen A, of course. I haven't debated a lot with Stephen A. I've been on some shows where we went at it, but he's obviously, you know, like really like one of a kind. I mean, Stephen A, I know he's got that New York, you know, he's just a New Yorker, and it comes out in who he is, his attitude and everything. But he's like one of a kind in sports media, man. And you got to give him his credit. I think Shannon Sharpe's really done a great job, you know, in making that transition from the great athlete to, you know, being a great debater. And I think my man Kendrick Perkins is making a little name for himself. And but it's great to see the athletes, Jalen Rose, a lot of them step up and make it in this space. But yeah, man, I would say to all the young cats out there, you got to know your stuff. Yeah. You know, if you want to debate, everybody, you know, I know a lot of people look at us on TV and they say, man, I could be up there. I got an opinion, you know, and it's true. Everybody has an opinion. But Stephen A. Smith put it so well, maybe a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. And he was like, everybody can have an opinion. And he said that right now, the opinion is the thing. Mm-hmm. But you have to earn the credibility where people care about your opinion. And that's the difference. Credibility, yeah. People, yeah, because anybody can get up there and argue their point or say that they have what they think about LeBron or Michael Jordan or whatever. But do people care? Yeah. So if you look at the guys that are doing it, they're either ex-athletes, so they have credibility from that, or like myself, Rob Parker, Skip Bayless, Stephen A. We were reporters. We covered the leagues. We talked to the coaches, talked to the players, broke stories, reported on the games. That's credibility because people know we put in years of service. And then the third way is that if you come out of school and you start right away in the opinion field through radio, mainly, like you started out in radio. And maybe you started out in a small market and you worked your way up to bigger markets, but you develop your credibility like that. Like Nick Wright, as far as I know, was never a beat reporter. Yeah, no. But he started out in radio and developed his voice and his opinions, and he gained his credibility that way by having radio shows. And so those are really the three ways to do it. But you got to have the credibility where people give 2 cents about what you say about this trade or that player or whatever it is. Yeah. Last topic, I want to bring this up to you, and I think it's important if you could speak on it, because there's been this trend recently, everything with politics and things going on in the world, the George Floyd incident, that I feel as though white people in sports media have become too comfortable with, I'd say, exposing their racial views. And I've noticed it a lot, especially in the New York radio areas, especially with Boomer Esiason and Giannotti there on WFAN. They've been things that they say on the radio. I noticed that it could be subtle to people listening, where they go at people are from low income housing, different things where this can offend listeners. Do you notice that, like when certain people that even people that you've worked with in the past, that there tend to be some
overtones racially in sports media?
I haven't heard what Esias and Boomer and those guys have said. But I don't think it's particular to sports media.
Mhm.
I think it's just America in general. And a lot of white males in general. Because let's face it, whites have had dominance in this country ever since its inception. Before it was actually a country.
Yeah.
Whites have dominated. And so as we're trying to move toward equality, for a lot of whites, particularly men who really had the dominance, that can be an uncomfortable position. Even if for some it's conscious that I want to remain the dominant group of people in this country. And for others, it's unconscious. But it's just the fact that when you grew up and everything you've seen and every situation and experience you've been in, you've been the dominant group. And so if I've been in press rooms where there have been 50 people and maybe 5 of them were African-American, and some of the white guys, and I'm saying they felt this way. Some of the white guys felt like the black guys are taking over because it's 5 out of 50. You know why? Because they're used, when they were coming up, it was none. It might have been 1 out of 50. And so for a lot of whites, it's just they've never, they're not used to equality. They're used to dominance. And for some, it's that. So for them, it's just they're not even used to it. Others, they recognize it, but they want the dominance. They still want the dominance, and so they don't like it, what's happening. So I think and like I said, I don't think that's particular to sports media. I think it's true in all media, and I think it's true in America in general. And that's one reason why there's such a polarization in the country. I mean, there's this big debate now about critical race theory and should it be taught in the schools. And in Texas, they're really bugging where they don't even want, it's not mandatory to teach. They just passed something where it's not mandatory to teach that the Ku Klux Klan was morally wrong. It's not mandatory to teach Martin Luther King and what he did with the civil rights movement, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, that is.
Because those things are just objective history.
Yep. And
that shows you the levels to which some people are willing to go to maintain white dominance. Mm-hmm. And my thing is, look, that's one of the reasons the country is so polarized, because I think most white Americans don't grow up learning true American history. And so they grow up learning that everything about America was great. And it's been this awesome, great country with freedom and justice for all and all that stuff. And that's just not the case. Now, that doesn't mean we have to hate America. I'm African-American, well-versed in African-American history, and know the tragedies, that the oppression, the discrimination that African-American people have faced in this country. And yet I'm still a proud American and love my country. But I know it's not perfect. I love my family, and I know my family's not perfect. And there have been things done wrong within my family. Mm-hmm. And so that's how white Americans need to understand criticism of America's past does not mean we have to hate the country. It just means that, like Martin Luther King said, we want America to be true to what it said on paper. And so with so many whites growing up with a false view of American history, mm-hmm. that's why we can't unify. That's why we can't get past this racial issue, because they have a view that what's the problem?
Yeah.
America's been great. Like, what do you mean? Yeah, okay, it's a little racism. We get that. But for the most part, it's been great. And when you really, they're mad about the true history. And so we're Black Americans and some white Americans who understand the situation, they're coming at it from one perspective. And many white Americans who really don't know true American history are looking at it from a totally different view. And so if we're not even agreeing on the problem, then how can we come to a solution? And too many whites don't even agree on the problem. They'll admit there's racism and we got to get over it, but they're really not willing to go deep and see really what the issue is. And so that's why the country's so polarized, and racially, it's just a problem.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And then when you think of the media people that say just shut up and dribble, I feel as though these people in the media only care about Black people if they're athletes or they're successful, because then when something else is coming out of their mouth, they're taking a crap on Black people.
No, that's very true. And that's why I think that it's important for African-American athletes and others in the public eye to speak out about these issues. Because I say it about our athletes, it's unfortunate, but I think it's the reality. Black American athletes are the wealthiest African Americans, the most well-connected African Americans when it comes to powerful people in the country, whether it's politicians, corporate titans, wealthy African American or wealthy people in America in general. African American athletes are the most connected to them because McDonald's wants that athlete, Nike wants that athlete, Coca-Cola wants that athlete. So you're connected to these major corporations. And then they're the most beloved and they're the most irreplaceable African Americans in the country. See, LeBron James can say whatever he wants because he's irreplaceable. Yep. You know, Patrick Mahomes can say whatever he wants. Mm-hmm. He's irreplaceable. If Pat Mahomes did what Colin Kaepernick did, you think he'd be out of the league?
No.
Heck, not.
No.
Right? It wouldn't have even been a big deal, or it would have become a trend or something. Kaepernick was replaceable because he was no longer a star. He was no longer that good, right? He was a second stringer, which to me made what he did more courageous. Mm-hmm. But that's why I think the athletes have to come speak out. And I'm telling you, as much as I love and respect and am grateful for the civil rights movement and all the African Americans and white Americans and others who fought for equality in this country, if it weren't for Black athletes, I don't even mean speaking out. I just mean being great. Mm-hmm. Black Americans would not be as far along in this country as we are. Yeah. Like African American dominance of sports has endeared African Americans to some degree to mainstream white America. Because white men love sports. Yep. And so if you grow up loving football, baseball, or basketball in this country, guess what? Your heroes in many cases are going to be Black. Your idols are going to be Black. The people you emulate and try to play with and look up to in sports are going to be Black. And so that to some degree has endeared Black Americans to whites. But to your point, a lot of times that doesn't translate from the superstar athlete to the average African American who can't run a 4.5 40 or dunk a basketball. And so, but it has trickled down a little bit. Yeah. And I think that's very, very responsible. And I would throw in on the lower level, mm-hmm. entertainment, Black comedians,
rappers,
Black actors, Black rappers, the musicians. All of that has endeared African Americans a little more to mainstream America. Native Americans haven't had that impact on American culture that Black Americans have. Mm-hmm. And so they're not getting the justice even to the degree that Black Americans get it. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Indians just changed their name. Native Americans, now I know there's some that didn't think it was offensive, but Native Americans have been protesting against that name for decades.
Yep. Same with Washington.
Right. Same with the
Football.
Redskins or Washington. And those names are racial epithets, particularly the Redskins name, to a lot of Native Americans. That would be like having the Washington Sambos or something.
Yeah.
And that would never fly, but it should fly for all people, even if they aren't powerful. Because if you really have opened up your mind and are not racist or not prejudiced, then you wouldn't just respond to these situations when there's pressure put on you, or because Black Americans have some degree of success in this society and some degree of power. You would do it even for the Native Americans who don't really have that much power in this country, or the other groups that are marginalized that really don't have the numbers or the power. And so, yeah, man, I just think it's so important for the true history to be understood and taught, because then that can change people's mentalities, and then we can maybe get to some solutions.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was an important discussion that I wanted to address because I just wanted to get it off my chest. It's been eating at me for months, and since I've been hearing some of the things on WFAN in the morning, and I wanted to share that with you, make sure we speak out about these things. But Chris Broussard, I appreciate your time. I thank you for coming on the show. Is there anything else you want to let the listeners know that people can connect with your King movement, especially through their website, and contact you on social media? Do you have any upcoming announcements that you have to make with the movement, or anything in sports in general with your shows?
Yeah, I would just say if you want to learn more about the King movement, check us out at kingmovement.com, or you can email us at king@kingmovement.com. And we're on social media, Instagram, Twitter, at those addresses. Myself, you can follow me on Twitter at Chris_Broussard, Instagram, Chris Broussard 68. And if I speak at corporations, colleges, schools, churches around the country. So if you're interested in having me speak, either virtually or in person, you can go to my website, chrisbroussardspeaks.com, chrisbroussardspeaks.com, and you can book me there. So those are the ways that people can reach me. And, I'd love to come speak at your organization or whatever.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Chris Broussard. You're a true inspiration. Keep giving us that real sports talk that we love every day. And I want you to enjoy the rest of your day and take care and stay safe.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And keep up the good work, man. And good luck in your career endeavors.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man.
All right, bro. Peace.
Yeah. Peace.